Hello card friends, I'm Chaz and this is Rainbow Reverse. Today we're going to be talking about D-BT02, a brush with legends, and cards within the set that have premium potential. Now, I'll be honest, I don't think this set has quite as many cards in it that are as useful for premium specifically. This isn't really going to be a video about how the ride lines and archetypes featured in the set and the first set work in premium. It's more about cards that you can put into your existing premium clan decks. And as a result, there isn't a super large list since a lot of the cards are already archetype specific to the overdress units. And admittedly, a lot of the cards I feel like I am reaching a little bit, but I just wanted to put some stuff out there so that way people could see. I looked through every card multiple times, really trying to just find stuff that I thought, hey, maybe this can work. Hopefully this list is helpful to you, and maybe it can give you some ideas for deck building. So before I get into the specific nations, I just want to say we've got these new front triggers that when your opponent is on grade 3 or greater, they get 5,000 additional shield, making them 20k shields. Front triggers are not my favorite trigger. I prefer running criticals, as I know a lot of people do. However, this added shield value does make them more interesting and give them a little more playability. Specifically in premium, fronts have never been the strongest thing ever, but with these new shields and the new heal guardians coming out eventually, it's very possible that putting a couple of these in your deck could be useful. And depending on what kind of deck you run, fronts might be good for you anyway. So if you're already running fronts, then you just want to swap some of these in just to get that added shield value. There's no reason to not play more defensively if you have the option. So we'll get into nations now. I'm going to start with Dragon Empire. So looking at the Overlord ride line specifically, I figure you're probably not going to want to run the Overlord because it doesn't generate any more value necessarily than previous Overlords may. The V1 also just gives you a force marker, but even then I don't think people really run the regular Draconic Overlord. They would much rather run the Ends and the Crosses and maybe the Legion. You know, you've got a lot stronger Overlords already, so you're probably not gonna look to the new Draconic Overlord. However, it does have a little bit of support that might be useful in your build, maybe. So let's first look at Dragon Knight Nehalem. Its skill is auto. When this unit is rode upon by a unit with Overlord in its card name, call this card to rearguard circle. And then act rearguard circle once per turn. If you have a Vanguard with Overlord in its card name, cost Soul Blast 1. And this unit and all of your Vanguards get plus 5,000 power until the end of turn. Now, I don't necessarily think that this is an essential card that you do want to run. However, it does just say Overlord in its name, so it has a generic enough application that you can get a plus from it. The Soul Blast skill for the plus 5,000 power is probably mostly negligible, but if you're running Force 2s, it could add a little extra power in there to both a rearguard column and Vanguard column, so just something to consider. Part of the problem with ride line skills in premium is that we don't have ride decks, so things are less guaranteed, so that's just something to think about. Also looking at the ride line, there is Embodiment Armor Bar. When this unit is rode upon by Dragon Knight Nehalem, cost Counterblast 1. Search your deck for up to one grade 1 card, reveal it, put it into your hand, and shuffle your deck. And then also auto rearguard circle. Once per turn, when your Vanguard attack hits, this unit gets plus 5,000 power till the end of the turn. Mostly looking at for that first skill. If you're running the Overlord that allows your hand to always just count as 0, you pretty much have no reason not to run those grade 1 PGs because then they just always are free. Except for obviously just needing other grade 1 slots. I suppose I don't play Kagero, so don't have the strongest opinion on it. But being able to search out a grade 1 is pretty useful. It does cost a counterblast, which I don't know how counterblast heavy Overlord is in premium, so maybe that's too much. And again, also ride line skill that is not guaranteed without the ride deck, so it's kind of a risk in that regard also. But again, I just figured it has the option there. Also, Berserk Dragon. When this unit attacks, if you have a Vanguard with Overlord in its card name, this unit gets plus 5,000 power till the end of that battle. Then cost counterblast 1. Choose one of your opponent's grade 2 or less rear guards and retire it. So it gets a little power and it can retire something, which might be useful. It works with Overlord. I'm just looking for things that have generic enough application in premium. I'm not saying they're all necessarily going to be cards you definitely want to run. And I have one more for Dragon Empire. It's Drag Ritter Idris, and it has rearguard circle act. If your opponent's rearguard was retired this turn, counterblast 1 and perform one of the following. This unit gets plus 10,000 power until the end of turn, or put this unit into your soul, choose one of your opponent's grade 2 or greater rearguards and retire it. So if you're playing a deck that has a lot of retire abilities in premium, this can just be another way to get more cards off the field, or you can give yourself a 15k booster, which might be strong enough to land some devastating attacks. So something to consider. Moving on to Dark States, I didn't really think a lot of cards were necessarily that useful to the pre-existing clan decks, mostly because, again, a lot of the new cards in this set are archetype specific to Barrow Magnus or Bruce, and this isn't necessarily about how to make those decks premium, because it would just basically be your standard deck for the most part with some added cards in. So you already know if that card is good in standard, it would be good in the premium build of that. But this is for other decks. So I have Time Jarrate Dragon. Auto, when this unit is placed on rearguard circle, cost put a card from your hand into your soul and draw a card. This is a grade 3, so it does make it a little harder to use in most of the pre-existing Dark States decks, just because I feel grade 3 slots are already pretty tightly packed in those decks. However, it does allow you to get stuff out of your hand that you don't need, get more stuff into your soul, and then replaces that card in hand. So maybe if you're playing like a Pale Moon deck and you need a specific card just to be on your soul, you know, this is how you could get that. Or if you're playing Dark Irregulars and you just need more cards in soul, it's an option. Again, I think you probably have better stuff already, but just a generic enough card to get through your deck a little quicker. The other card is Supernatural Extraction. It's an order card. Play this with cost Counterblast 1 and discard a card from your hand. Soul Charge 3. Then if your soul has 10 or more cards, choose a card from your soul and you may put it into your hand. So again, just helps ramp up soul. These are usually pretty soul heavy decks, whether you need to call cards from soul for Pale Moon, or have a lot of soul for Dark Irregulars, or do a lot of soul blasting for Spike Brothers. Either way, this is just an easy way to get more stuff in soul. Again, it is grade 3, so if you're tight on deck space, I wouldn't necessarily say go for it, but it can help you build some stuff up, and if you put something in your soul that you need to play from your hand, it does allow you to get that back. Alright, moving on to Keter Sanctuary. I think Keter Sanctuary I found had the most cards that I thought were applicable enough to premium decks, so this will look nice. Also, little bias on my part, I play Keter Sanctuary because I play Gold Paladin, Royal Paladin, and then Alexi plays Shadow Paladin, and Joe plays Angel Feather, so I'm very familiar with the nation as a whole, so I can see it a little better than I can with the other nations, so that might be part of the reason I have more cards here. Again, if I miss a card for another nation that I don't play as much, that you were like, you know, this is a card you should have said, Chaz. You should put that in the comments and let me know. Starting off, Blaster Dark. Auto, when this unit is placed on Vanguard or Rearguard circle, cost Counterblast 1 and retire another Rearguard. Choose one of your opponent's Rearguards, retire it, and this unit gets +1 drive until the end of the turn. And continuous Rearguard circle during your turn. If your Rearguard was retired this turn, this unit gets +5,000 power. Now, I think this pretty much is a solid replacement for V-era Blaster Dark. I'm still a little unsure, maybe for the Royal Paladin MLB deck if you want to run this one specifically, because you have to sack a unit, which Royal Paladin is not as well equipped to recover from, and it doesn't have the Royal Paladin clan name associated with it, so unless you also call so you have to retire something, then call something else that has Royal Paladin in the name to actually get any use out of your triggers. So it can still work in your Royal Paladin build, but I'm still unsure if I would rather run this over the V. Now again, for Shadow Paladins, I think this is a pretty solid card to run, because you can try to retire like a grade 1, just get that in your drop zone for later turns for more Fessas or whatever you might be doing, and then you can still get your drive. And if your opponent has a card to retire, obviously that's great. Early in the game it can be a little hard to retire for your opponent's side of the field, because they might not call stuff down if they're not trying to rush too hard or anything, but it's there. And then the second skill, just you're going to be retiring stuff because it is Shadow Paladin, so it just will most likely be 15 on most of your turns, which can be really helpful. Next card is Witch of Entertainment Brana. Continuous Rearguard circle. If you have a Vanguard with Blaster in its card name, when this unit would be retired for your card's cost, you may retire it as 2 Rearguards. So obviously this has the Blaster restriction, so it doesn't necessarily work for every build, but if you are playing a deck built around Blaster archetypes, or you're striding on top of something with a Blaster name, again with like a Morfessa or something, this counts as 2 Rearguards. And what's also nice is it's 5,000 power, so the main can search it. So it's just a nice way to retire less cards and get more value. Again, granted, as long as you have enough stuff in your drop zone for your rituals already, then this just keeps you from losing too many cards along the way. Now, I do have the normal order in here, Form Up, O Chosen Knights. Its skill is, play this with cost Counterblast 1 and Soul Blast 1. Perform all of the effects below according to the number of your grade 3 units. 2 or more, choose one of your units and it gets power plus 5,000 until the end of turn. 3 or more, draw a card. 4 or more, choose one of your Vanguards and it gets drive plus 1 until the end of turn. Now, for most Keter decks, unless you're trying to play Bastion in Premium somehow, this will probably not work. Now, there is one deck in particular, though, where I can see this card being useful, and that's Gold Paladin. Gold Paladin typically runs a relatively high grade 3 count, at least as things are right now. Getting extra drives for pretty much any Gold Paladin build is just super nice, especially because you probably have a lot of units just on the field in general, so being able to give them more power. Also, it gets you a card in hand just from the draw. So there's a really good chance you'll have 4 more grade 3s out in Gold Paladin. Now, again, deck space. Can you fit it in? I could see it being put in as like maybe a 1 or 2 of in some decks. Because like imagine you're striding Gurgawit and then you have some grade 3s out on your Rearguard circles. And you have the Gurgawit that gives you the +1 drive already. So then, you know, you could turn that into 5 drive, which could be pretty wild. Or even if you're just sitting on your V Gurgawit, you could still do that and then just get triple drive, thus giving you more reasons not to stride when you're playing Gurgawit. So again, for Gold Paladins, I think this card has use. And again, Counterblast Soul Blast is not that harsh in that deck because you have a lot of ways to get resources back. Another card is Stellar Razer Angel. When this unit attacks, if your damage zone has no face-up cards, this unit gets plus 5,000 till the end of battle. It just works in alt mile if you want a 15k base in alt mile, and then it gets either the boost and the power gain, or however you play your deck. I don't think it's maybe better than any other cards that might exist in the deck. That is like the one Royal Paladin deck I've not played that much, and not in premium at all. So I don't know if you necessarily would run this card, but if you're thinking, oh hey, base 15, grade 2, and then add my stuff on top of it, could be something useful. Another card here is Knight of Heavenly Collapse Capaldo. Auto, when this unit is placed on a rearguard circle from hand, cost Counterblast 1, rest out of the rearguard. Reveal the top card of your deck. Put it into your hand if it is an order card or a grade 3, and call it to rearguard circle if it isn't. This has pretty good application in multiple decks. Obviously, you can use it in Gold Paladin. If you have some mid-battle calling, you can try to sack your way into getting more units out on your field. Or even you could play it in Shadow Paladins and just either get some more stuff on your field that you can sacrifice, or get another grade 3 in your hand for the purpose of strides or riding, etc. I just think this card's pretty good. You could use it in multiple clans, I think. Where does it fit in your deck space? I don't know. That's for you to figure out. Use your big brain, kid. Next card is Magic of Advancement Melcoco. Auto, when this unit is placed on rearguard circle, cost Soul Blast 1, draw a card. Choose a card from your hand and discard it. Easy cycle, and you get to draw before the discard, so you know what you're getting before you lose something. So maybe you even draw something that you find worth discarding, but it helps you get through your deck a little quicker if you just need pieces. A lot of decks might have good soul. Obviously, in Genesis, you're going to be soul blasting a lot. You want to be soul blasting in Genesis too, so that could come in handy. And again, this is just a good way to get a card in your hand, and you just get rid of something if you don't need it. And our last Keter Sanctuary card is Knight of Heavenly Thundering Lady. Act, rearguard circle, cost Soul Blast 2, and until the end of the turn, the power increase of trigger effects revealed by your drive checks gets plus 5,000 power. Now, this one I thought about a bit, and I was like, is it worth it to run this card? Now again, in Genesis, get some Soul Blast and you get powers, increase your triggers. That has that application. And then another thing I thought about is a lot of Keter decks, especially in premium, I know do run a lot of old triggers, whether it be running a lot of stands for Shadow Paladin, or your Floral Paladin Flogels in Royal Paladin, your stand triggers in Genesis with Taro. Things like that, they only have 5,000 power. So if you have Soul to spare, this can then bring them up to 10k. Sometimes it does hurt to pull that 5k trigger, and maybe it just doesn't stack up enough power. So this can help you get to 10k, or even if you just hit some 10k triggers, now they're 15k, which can hurt your opponent if they're not ready for that. Alright, moving on to Stoichio. We've got Deep Emotion Maiden Urjula. Continuous rearguard circle. When you would exchange or move rearguards during the main phase, you may also move them along rows. Then continuous rearguard circle. Your units in front of this unit cannot be chosen by your opponent's effects. So the first skill can be just kind of useful in any Stoichio clan. If you need to move things along during your main phase, you know, it allows you to really just move things around. If you have specific combinations that you need to change, saying like Aqua Force, you can now move them in different places to set up combos again without having to like retire stuff. That's an option, or just anything else where you might need to move cards around. Super useful. The second skill is okay. It depends on how much your opponent can control your board during a turn. If say they only can control one card, well then you can at least save the unit in front of this. Or if they can control more than one card by either retiring, binding, locking, etc., they at least have to use more resources because they have to get this first and then the next one. So again, that skill is not as important, I think, as the first skill, but it could be useful, especially because it's continuous even during your turn and your opponent's turn. So your opponent can't, say, hit you with a G guard, like a denial griffin, that would get that card, unless they have a way to get multiple cards off that can do it. But still, it could be useful. Next, we got the normal order regurgitation from the underworld. Play this with cost Counterblast 1 and Soul Blast 1. Choose one of any player's rear guards, retire it, choose up to one card with the same grade as that card from your drop, and call it to rearguard circle. If during Alchemagic, you may choose up to 2 instead of 1 to call. Now, the Alchemagic part may not come up in Premium right now, because I'd love to see it if someone has a Zorga Premium list, but I think just thinking about how this can be used, it gives you a control option, because you can sack one of your opponent's cards and then pull one of your own back. That's pretty solid just on its own without the getting to from Alchemagic, especially if you're playing a clan that doesn't have any control options. Now again, we come back to the classic issue of this list, and that it is grade 3, so might be a little tight in deck space. Also, it's an order, so it doesn't have shield in general, but good utility. I could see this coming, especially if you're playing Grand Blue too. You can also just get rid of one of your own cards if you need to, get something and drop, bring something else back. Easy. Then we also got Nectar of Sensations. This is another normal order card. Choose one of your rear guards. Until the end of turn, it gets plus 5,000 power for every 5 cards in your drop. And if your drop has 15 or more cards, it gets critical plus 1. Obviously in Grand Blue, this is easy. You just get a bunch of power, and then you get a crit on something. Just make your row more devastating. And if you're playing another Stoichio clan that isn't Grand Blue, maybe you still do have a fair amount of cards in your drop and could still use this, or save it for like a late game thing when you really just have gone through your deck. I know that there are also other Stoichio clans that do have mill skills also, so you do go through your deck a bit with a lot of these. It could be useful in more than just Grand Blue, depending on how much you go through your deck, but definitely a card to look at if you want to add some more pressure. This one is Shuldfisher Dragon, or however you might pronounce that. And then it says continuous Vanguard or rearguard circle. If you did not call a rearguard from card other than hand this turn, this unit cannot attack. Now, the thing you'll notice about this card is it has 18k base, meaning if you're on Vanguard Circle and you stride on top of it, its skill does not matter. And now you're sitting on probably a 33k Vanguard unit, which a lot of decks are maybe not as equipped to defend against. And then also during your opponent's turn, you're on 18k, which makes guarding for you easier. That's the thing. That's all this card does. So it might not be worth it for the power, but it is kind of funny. And for it being kind of funny, I kind of respect it. If there's one thing I love about Premium, it's that it's the format that you can make funny decks in. So I always encourage a good funny deck, a good meme deck, if you will. So this card's good for that. Now, maybe, again, you're a big brain player, you've got the skills, you've got the smarts, you know how to build a deck around this card that will kick some ass. I'd love to see it. And I got one more card for Stoichio, Lady Demolish, auto rearguard circle. When the attack this unit boosted hits a Vanguard, you may discard the top 5 cards of your deck. I think depending on what deck you play, this card probably is not something you'd want to play. It could have some Grand Blue usage, though I would think you would maybe just use Navigator if you're looking to mill 5 specifically. Also, it being behind an on hit is a little rough, because depending on how the meta is in Premium, trying to hit your opponent, you know, could be a backfire, you know, so it's something to keep in mind. But if you do need to mill out more cards for something that isn't Grand Blue, then you could pop this in. This could get more cards in your drop, and then you could also use it back with that order from the other card to get those power and crits on your units. So that's something interesting. Again, I don't necessarily think that this is a card that you may want to run in anything, but be a big brain player and figure it out. And it hurts my soul to say this, but there was really not a lot for Brantgate in this set for premium, and that is mostly because everything is very Orphist and Seraph Snow specific. Now I think people are getting creative and figuring out ways to work in those cards into premium, and I'm very curious to see where we go as more cards come out, because again, as the sets go on and on, it will be more likely that we'll start to see these cards come to premium, and we'll see premium Orphist decks and premium Seraph Snow decks, and I'm super curious as to how all that will go in the future. But for now, while that is not quite as viable, we're still sticking with our clans as we know them. So there weren't as many cards for this set that were generic enough, or even good enough, honestly, in that sense, also to fit into, but I did have 2 cards that I thought may have some use. One is the set order Eclipsed Moonlight, which is cost, play this with Counterblast 1. When this card is put into the order zone, call a Shadow Army token to your rearguard circle. Then it has the Dark Knight and Abyssal Dark Knight keywords on it. So this is cool because you can just put this in your Dimension Police deck, your Link Joker deck, or your Nova Grappler deck if you just want to get a 15k grade 1 out there. You could use it in Nova Grappler, 15k, boom, now you can boost a big column. Or it can just be a card that you have to restand. Or you give it to Link Joker and you just make one of your columns even bigger. Especially maybe if you're playing like Messiah and it boosts like Vocal Goat or something. Now you've got a really big column on your hands. Or Dimension Police, where you've already got a lot of power on your field, so hey, here's more power. I think that's fun. It also allows you to just have a rear guard that you generate without losing one of your other cards if you need it. It also gives you a set order, so if you want to run like a Bulbamine for counter charge, you can just pop this down, get a unit from it, and then you can use Bulbamines to refund your counter blasts now, just throughout the rest of the game. So that's something to keep in mind also. That's another reason I like this card. It's very interesting. I would love to see how people work this into a deck. And then I've got one more card from this set for Brantgate, and that's Twisting Bulldoze. And its skill is Auto Rearguard Circle. When this unit attacks, if you have more rearguards than your opponent, cost Counterblast 1, Soul Charge 1, and this unit gets plus 10,000 power until the end of that battle. I think this may have some application because you do usually need Soul for, say, a Chaos deck, or definitely if you're playing Nova Grappler, you need a lot of Soul, and I do find myself sometimes having a hard time managing Soul when I'm playing Nova Grappler. So Counterblast for Soul Charge, is it worth it? I don't necessarily think it might be, but it is an option, and then it does become 23k for that attack though, so that is pretty nice on a rearguard circle, especially if you're playing Nova Grappler and a lot of your units aren't as strong on their own. And in Nova Grappler, you're probably going to have more rearguards than your opponent if they're not like an Excel deck. Or even in Link Joker, you could use it because if you lock your opponent's cards, then hey, now you probably have more rear guards than them if you call this stuff down. But classically, it is a grade 3, so tight deck space. Again, it's just an option. So that's all the cards from set 2 that I thought might have some premium applications. Again, I don't think these are necessarily the strongest cards, and you might not even want to run a lot of the cards that I brought up at all. I just wanted to put the idea out there, you know, maybe get those creative juices flowing, see if people maybe can come up with something cool and creative with this stuff. Now, at any time, any card can become good. That's also a thing that's interesting to me about premium specifically, is as other cards come out, suddenly old cards that you thought may have been worthless suddenly become really busted. So I always want to keep a good list and collection of things that might be useful, just because they're generic enough applications that as new stuff comes out, they can work for those new cards really well. If you have a card from set 2 that you think is really good for any premium deck, I want to hear it. Put it in the comments. I want to know what you think. Again, I don't play every clan. I only play a handful, and everyone that I play premium with also only plays a handful, so we only know so much. I only know so much as one player. So if there's like a card that I glossed over, was like, oh, I can't see why anyone would want to run this, and you were like, Chaz, you silly goose, you should have used this card because it works really well in this deck, please put it in there. I want the people to know. So I think that's everything for this video. Honestly, I went on a little longer than I thought I would, considering that I didn't even have 20 cards to talk about. I guess it just gets the sparks flying when I start talking about this stuff. Thank you all for watching. This has been Rainbow Reverse, wishing you all the best. Bye.